which is looking at the latent embeddings of neural networks and looking at the shape, basically. And so this whole project was structured around answering one question, which is looking at the shape the neural network gives its data. And you can also check out the paper if you're interested. And here's a quick intro about me. I'm a PhD student at the University of Utah, and I mostly work on interpretability, explainability, and visualization for machine learning. And I focus on EHR and genomic foundation models. I'm currently being advised by Paul and Warren. We're associated with the SKI and HMHI institutes. So to get started, I'd like to show this illustration to people. So all machine learning models are kind of black boxes, most of them, and people are looking for ways to interpret the results that they're producing, and they're like multiple ways. You could probe into the model, you could train a sparse autoencoder, or like look at the logits and whatnot. So this is a really nice way to visualize it. So every model lives someplace between watering the plant and looking at the flower grow. And why should we care about this? Because like lately, deep learning models are being deployed in high-stakes settings such as healthcare and finance, and they still remain as black boxes. And they're tools which like help interpret the local and attribution-centric representations, but they don't answer why this prediction was given, or why the model took a certain route. And that's the reason it's not really interpreting the model. You're still trying to explain it, but it's not really there. And here we tried using persistent homology, which is a concept in computational topology, because it offers a model agnostic and geometry aware interpretable method. Like you can interpret the model like no matter what architecture it is, or how large the dimensions are, or what the inputs are. You could apply to any kind of architecture. And the hypothesis was like this study was mostly focused around discriminative models. So the study was looking at the clusters that are being formed in the activation spaces. And the hypothesis was H0, persistent homology, was the right tool. We can actually talk about persistent homology now. So you can think of persistent homology as a way to understand point clouds and its shape. So you basically have like different data points in a point cloud, and you look at how the clusters form, like how the data points merge into clusters, or how they split, or if there's like loops or voids or any other shapes associated with them. And the way to look at it is with persistent homology. You can remember this analogy that I have here, which is like it's like a microscope with a tunable focus. We'll talk soon as to why this matters. So the core idea behind persistent homology is that you have lots of data points and you're trying to grow a ball of radius epsilon around every point, and you watch how the clusters merge as the radius grows. So if a cluster is long-lived, it's a signal. If it's short-lived, it's just noise. And in our experiments, we only track H0, which is looking at the clusters, but there are other higher dimensional features such as loops and voids, but we don't look at them necessarily. And here's a nice way to visualize what we just spoke about. Like, let's say you have isolated points, and this whole thing is your point cloud or your activation from the neural network. And at the first step, you have like 14 different points. And as you grow the radius, you have like clusters that are being formed here. And you can see that there's like 1, 2, 3, and 4 clusters that are formed here, and have these local edges that are appearing as you increase the radius of the balls. And as you keep on moving, like as you keep on increasing the radius, you tend to see more clusters form, and some clusters die, and you can see that they're kind of representing the classes, the data points. Like for example, like the blue data points are associated with this cluster here, and the same thing is with the green data points here and the orange data points over there. But as you keep increasing the radius, at a certain point the clusters merge and they all form like a single blob. We don't care about this blob, but it's part of the concept. So we're still looking at the single component. So like this is a really nice way to look at H0 persistent homology, and yeah. So, and also some terminology that I want you all to remember. You have like birth, which is forming of clusters, and then death, which is merging of clusters. So these are like two events in persistent homology. And if anyone has like any questions, I'm ready to take them, because like before we move ahead into the neural network side of things. What exactly is a data point here? So Pablo asked that what exactly is a data point. So the data point is like an input to the neural network. It could be an image, it could be your ECG data, or text, or audio, or whatever it is. Like you could come up with anything. So if you have like time series data, it's your numerical values. That's a data point. All right. Any other questions related to persistent homology?
Okay, guys, I shared the link to Slido in the Google chat. If you want to ask any questions anonymously, you can leave your questions there. And when Saad asks for any questions, I'll just read them aloud if you're shy. So I think no questions for now. You continue and ask for questions. I'll give you answers. We have some anonymous ones.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. So there are 2 points that you have to remember here. The core idea. So the clusters merge as the radius grows, and at a certain threshold, the clusters that are formed, like in the filtration process, mimic the original classes of the data points. So like, let's say your data points have classes like cats, dogs, and fish or something. You can imagine that. So there are the 3 classes, and these are the different images. So as you perform the filtration process, you will notice that at a certain threshold, the data points of a certain class cluster together, because like they're close to each other in the latent space. And if they don't cluster together, then there's something wrong with the latent space, and that's the main hypothesis. And again, like here are some standard persistent homology visualizations. So these are the two standard tools that people use to visualize it. So one is like a persistence diagram, and the other one is the barcode. So like they actually represent your birth and death times, or the thresholds, like what I mentioned back here. So you have like birth is when like a cluster forms, and death is when the clusters merge. And that could be seen over here. And like this is the standard way of visualizing that. And it's not really helpful for us. Like it's helpful for mathematicians, but it's not helpful for AI engineers, which is why we had to develop other additional visualizations. Yeah, so here's the idea. And just like Pablo asked recently, so what are the data points? Data points could be your images. And once you have like a batch of images and you send them through a neural network, you get activations from each layer. And they are your point clouds. And they're like point clouds like this. And persistent homology is a way to understand the geometry of the data, the geometry of your data points, your activations, and so on. And here, like you can look at some of the existing tools, and they're all local, like I mentioned earlier. They only explain like individual predictions, but not the manifold itself. It's like you're trying to interpret a single data point and not the manifold that the neural network has learned, which is detrimental to us in the explainability side of things. And here's like a lit review of all the different ways people have tried to interpret models. And it's mostly related to discriminative models and not the generative stuff. So the things that you're seeing here are quite old, like RIME, SHAP, GradCam, and saliency maps, and CNN explainer, and all these things. And so this project is mostly looking at the global landscape and the shape or the representation of the manifold. So yeah, it's not like a competitor, but it's like a complement to these local attribution methods. And now getting to the neural network side of things. So what does fold do? So let's say you have an input image. You send it to the neural network. You have like a linear transformation, and you have the nonlinearity stuff, and it just keeps repeating till you have the final function where you get all the class probabilities. So you can attach a forward hook, like you can probe into the nonlinear activation and get these point clouds. And the shape of the point cloud is n cross d, where n is the number of data points and d is the dimension of the point cloud, like the nonlinear dimension. It could be like 224, it could be 768, 1024, so on and so forth. So you basically take these activations and then you send it through our library, and then you get the filtration. And the filtration is the concept that we talked about a while back. And yeah, so how do we do this? We attach a forward hook, which is probing into the nonlinear activation. We get the activation point clouds, we put it through the library, and then we get the filtration. It's like So the filtration is basically the shape or the topology of the point cloud. And with this, we can analyze the manifold even better. So the main contributions of the paper was the main method, which is using persistent homology to look at neural network activations. And we also provided additional visualizations, and we have like 3 demonstrations which support our hypothesis. So before I get into the method, does anyone have any question on the whole pipeline?
No Slido questions for now.
Okay.
Maybe some in chat.
Let's see. Well, I don't see any questions here. So
Cool. Then no questions. We can continue.
all right, sweet. So coming to the methodology, so if you like go back to the filtration process here, you'll notice that we're increasing the radius and we're trying to see if there's any cluster formation. And we actually tried using 5 metrics like Euclidean, Malnobis, geodesic, and density normalization and cosine. And we decided that the cosine similarity would be the default metric because like it lets us know the activations, and it just uses the angles. It doesn't use the L2 distance like Euclidean, which can result in loss of information. But a single metric can never tell the whole story, so we still let you try other metrics. You could even add additional metrics that you like, and then test it out. So why do we need the metric here? It is to look at the radius over here. Like we're creating these clusters based off of the radius, and the radius is nothing but the threshold distance out here, and that is the distance metric that's being used. And again, like we decided for like 4 different tasks for the interpretability, which is looking at the hierarchy of the clusters and the separability and the homogeneity and then the outliers. So what is the hierarchy? The hierarchy is when you look at how the H0 cluster evolves across the radius, how these components form, merge, and disappear. And like previous works have looked at that, and it suggests that looking at the hierarchy of the clusters is something that's important. And the separability of the clusters is important too. Like, let's say you train your neural network to classify promoter or enhancer genes, and you want to know how well these genes are classified. And if the clusters are not separate, then like the model is not well trained. Like you might be seeing good accuracies, but like the model might learn a certain decision boundary, but the separability would still be bad, which would harm downstream tasks. And the homogeneity is how these groupings occur. Are the groupings like close to each other, like are cats and dogs close to each other in the latent space, or horses and zebras close to each other in the latent space, or are they merged together? Do they overlap and whatnot? And the outliers are looking at these anomalous points which might appear out of nowhere. Like for example, you could see like a polar bear in an environment which is not like cold, and the model might classify the polar bear as a grizzly bear, or something like that. So we can also, we should also look at these outliers, and the visualizations that we designed is against these tasks. And you can actually look into these studies to learn more about these tasks and how they were formed. So here are the visualizations that we created. So this is basically a Sankey chart, and we tried using it for our application, which is looking at the filtration. So what you're seeing here is you have the original data points, and initially, at an initial radius, they're all individual data points. And as you keep on filtering the data points, you reach a certain threshold where they form clusters. And as you keep filtering, they merge together, and at another threshold, they all form like a single blob. So this is like the 5-stage Sankey that we designed to help us understand how these clusters form in the latent space, and how far they are from each other, and how separable they are. Are there like any outliers? Are they like homogeneous, or like stuff like that? And is there like any hierarchy in the clusters merging? So like this visualization tells you all of that. So yeah, so the hierarchy is shown over here. Like you can see that these clusters are close to each other. So at another threshold, they all merge together and form a bigger cluster. So there's some hierarchy here. And you can also look at the separability. Like these clusters are really clean. Like these data points are far away from each other, which is why you're seeing like this smooth curve, and there are no outliers, and they're completely separable. And the blob graph is another visualization that we developed, which tells us more about the separability, the homogeneity, and the outliers. So again, like each of these points are your data points, and they are colored by their classes, like their original classes. And the blob is the cluster that is being formed in the latent space, in the latent representation. And you can see that certain clusters have outliers in them, and certain clusters are not homogeneous. They're kind of mixed, like they're a mixture of two classes. Like this one is almost homogeneous. There's like 2 outliers here, and this cluster is not really good because 3 classes are merged with each other, and the model has not learned the manifold really well, which is why you're seeing this. And yeah, so the next one would be the heat map. And the heat map dendrogram is another nice way to look at the hierarchy of the cluster formation. So you can see like the clusters are individual data points, and they merge, and they all form like a single blob at the final threshold. So this is basically looking at filtration again from a different angle. Like these are way better than what you're seeing over here. Like this doesn't tell us about the data points. It doesn't tell us about the clusters. It only talks about birth and death. So our visualization lets you do that. Like these things let you look into the clusters, the data points, the whole manifold, and the shape of it. And yeah. So if you have like any questions on the visualizations, I'm ready to take them.
There's a question in the chat.
cannot see the chat. Give me a sec. How often do they form homogeneous clusters? At some point, according to the initial labels. So how often do they form homogeneous clusters? It depends on the model and how well trained the model is. If the model is really well trained, then it should form homogeneous clusters. Like if like the data pre-processing is really good, you don't have any weird anomalies in your train set, then the model should learn really well. And at some point, according to initial labels, well, the initial labels are your input data class. So if the model is well trained, then it should form homogeneous clusters. Yeah, but if the model is not well trained, then you'll have really crappy clusters, and we'll look at some of those examples later on in the presentation. I don't know if that answered your question or not, but I'm ready to go over it once more.
Okay, so Slido has no other questions.
Okay, sweet. It kind of answers it. Thanks. All right. Well, you're welcome, dude. I think there's like a lot of factors involved here, and it's really hard to like target any target a specific thing. Like you cannot be like, oh, there are no homogeneous clusters because of the train set. It could also be the architecture. Like I don't think we can expect something like your AlexNet to outperform VIT or like any transformer based architecture. So there are like tons and tons of factors involved here. How do I look into the slide, whatever questions? Like, do I just open that here?
No, I'll tell you if we have some. We'll have a separate block with questions at the end, but if somebody is shy, they can ask anonymously there. For now, we have no questions.
Oh, okay. Okay, so there are no questions out there, right?
Yes. I'll tell you
Okay.
when we have some. You can just ask.
Okay, sounds good. Just to do a quick recap, we're using cosine to look at the distances between data points. And you can use other metrics too, if you're interested. And for the topological neural network interpretability, we created these 4 tasks. Like we summarized all of it into these 4 tasks. It's like hierarchy, separability, homogeneity, and then outliers. And these 4 tasks rule the whole visualizations and all the downstream applications. So now looking at the applications, we actually focused on 3 main applications here. That is looking at the learned representation quality and robustness to noise, and then like model compression. We thought like these are really good applications to look at. There are other applications you could look into also, like looking at the training. Like you could apply this to your like you could just use this as an add-on to your 1DB or TensorBoard dashboard and look at how the topology changes as you train the model. Like that is one of the things that I have planned down the line. So here, let's look at the representation quality across layers. So here we have like VIT base 16, and this is the layer 9. The model has been trained on CFAR 10. You can see the 10 classes here, and you can see that it's a mess. Like there's nothing out here. You cannot see any clusters there. It's just noise, and you can look at the whole filtration process, and it's nothing but noise here. And they also converge really quickly, which suggests that the geometry is really weak. There's nothing out there in the latent space. But when you move deeper into the network, you see that there are clusters being formed. Well, of course, there's still noisy clusters out there, like noisy data points out there. And there are clusters with outliers. There are clusters which are not homogeneous, but you can still see that the clusters form across the filtration process. Like you have your true labels, and they all end up being part of a single cluster. Like you can see that the automobile cluster is almost part of this latent cluster. Like this is like there are no labels associated with the data point here, but the clusters are still being formed. Like there might be some outliers like this one here, but it still ends up being part of the same cluster as the filtration progresses. Like it all ends up being part of the same cluster. And you can see that there's another thing going on over here. I think this is dog, and you have cat, and they're actually forming a single cluster as the filtration progresses. Like this suggests that there's some similarity in the latent space. Like the model is doing this for a reason. And but there are also other outliers, like this thing here. Like this is supposed to be a horse, I guess. My bad. This is supposed to be a deer, and we don't know why it's being placed so far away from the cluster, but it's still the model is still doing that. And also one thing to keep in mind, like all the computations here are performed on the full rank embeddings and not the PCA of the embeddings. So the blobs that you're seeing here are not drawn in a two-dimensional space, but it's being drawn in the full rank. I think it's 768 for BIT. So these clusters are being formed in the full rank space. It's not the low dimensional space, which is something which is like amazing. Like model is able to cluster these data points together, and you're able to see that the blob visualization here. Like there are definitely some outliers, but you're still able to see that compared to layer 9, where it's all just noisy. So this is one thing that you can do using the library. I mean, we're also looking at the same thing with ResNet. Here we have data points of limited classes, like all the CFAR10 classes were not used here. But then you can still see that the clusters are formed beautifully. Like they are really clean. Like there's really less outliers. There's almost no noise here. And the whole filtration looks really clean. You can still look at the hierarchy and the separability, and the same thing can be seen over here with the blobs. Like all the clusters are almost homogeneous. Like there are outliers, yes, but they're mostly homogeneous in the full rank space, or like your like high dimensional space, and not your PCA space. And the same thing could be visualized here. Like you can see that the data points cluster together. Like you cannot see that in the heat map, but you can see that with the dendrogram, and that could be seen here. And we have a question: how would you use full? I hope I get the name right, to improve autoregressive language models performance. So here's the thing. So whatever you're seeing here, like this whole thing, is mostly for discriminative models. Like the generative models are something that I want to look at down the line because it's more complex and it's not as straightforward as looking at the clusters. And I'm still looking into those methods, but I don't think it's going to be part of this. But that would definitely be my next paper, hopefully. But yeah, so like all of this is with respect to your discriminative models and understanding discriminative models, because like there's still a lot of work that needed to be done over there. Like nobody looked at the geometry of those. Like people did look into the geometry of large language models. Like people were like, oh, the seasons of the year lie on a certain manifold, the months lie on a circular manifold, days of the week lie on a circular manifold. And people looked into that, but they just like went over the discriminative models. They didn't look at the topology of these, which is why this work was needed. So moving on, like, so yeah, like we were done with the resonant. So here we also have like BERT. Like in BERT, we look at the name entity recognition task, and you can see that the data points are far from each other and they cluster together. Like there's something going on in the manifold, and whole just lets you know about that. You can look at it from a topological lens. And you can also look at how the layers evolve, like how the model like classifies stuff, or how the representation evolves across layers. Like layer 4, everything's noisy, no clusters. There's nothing useful here. But as you go down, like to layer 9, something's being formed, but it's still kind of messy because I see this noisy data point over here, and the clusters are not really well organized. But as you go down, they're really well formed. The clusters are separate, and the model is able to discriminate between two different data points really well. And the model has a really good manifold. Like the model has learned a really good manifold. And here's the other application that we looked into, which is robustness under noise. So you have clean clusters here, which is when you have like your vanilla data points with no perturbations or anything. You just take the raw data points and you put them through the model, and you see that the clusters are compact, they're well separated, and but then like when you apply some Gaussian noise, there's some blurring that is happening in the high dimensional space. So the data points on the left and the data points in the middle here, they're the same. They're exactly the same data points, but there's some merging that is happening here, and there's some overlap, and the clusters are mixing because there's some perturbation that you're applying to the model. I mean, to the data point, and the model is doing this. But when you apply something like salt and pepper noise, there's nothing out here. You can see that the model just cannot classify things. The data points are all over, and it's only 10% salt and pepper, but still the model is not able to represent the data points really well on the high dimensional manifold. So this tells us that the model was not trained really well. Like we should have used better augmentation techniques. Like we could have used augmix or cut mix or salt and pepper, or like any of the noising techniques. Or the model is not robust, and the representation tells us that. And here we have the Sankey view of the same thing. Like Gaussian noise, the flows are still separate, but like the latent space is kind of kind of like compressed, because you can see that these numbers, like numbers in the filtration process, are really tiny compared to the raw data points. But they're still separate. Like they're still like clusters being formed, and you can see that the model performs in an okay way. But then you apply salt and pepper noise, it's a mess. Like it's all noisy data points, and there's nothing out here. Like all the clusters are like all over, like just like this. So like this still tells us about the manifold. And moving on to the third application here, which is looking at the quantization. So you take a model and you like over here, I performed like int8 dynamic quantization for like VIT, and like the accuracy was quite similar. Like there's only like a 2-point drop in accuracy, but like the clusters are quite different. Like you can see that a lot of data points are being pushed away from the original clusters. Like they're not part of the same clusters anymore, and they're being moved around in the manifold when the model is being quantized. Like this tells us that the model did not learn the manifold really well, and it's really weak when it comes to quantization techniques. Like people these days are using like 2-bit quantizations for their LLMs, or like other quantization techniques, which are like really useful for deployment purposes. And if your model is not performing well, then that's a problem. Or like let's say the model performs well, but the manifold is a mess. Like that's a problem. Like it is something that you cannot see with these accuracy numbers, but you can see with the high dimensional visualization here. And the same thing is visible with the Sankey's. Like the clusters are really clean. The clusters are separate from each other, but after you perform the intake quantization, the flows fragment, and there are like lots of noisy data points like these, and the whole latent space is a mess. And again, here's another example which tells you the same. Like the accuracy was the same when we used ResNet 50 with full precision and intake precision. It was completely the same. But when you look at the manifold, like it just changes completely. The representation is changed. Like there are a lot more outliers here, and like these classes are completely destroyed. Like you can see that there's only like one tiny cluster associated with cat, and most of it has been pushed around, and it's super messy. Yeah. Well, do you have any questions so far about the same kind of question, that how do you improve your predictive model performance with whole? I think you have ideas for sure. So I think like it's mostly left to the user. Like I mentioned the same thing in the paper too. So how do I improve the performance? Just use different augmentation techniques and different training strategies to make the model more robust to these different like methods, like downstream methods. Like if the model is really robust to noisy data, then like you wouldn't be seeing all of these. Like whole is more of a lens. It's like a microscope. You can look into the model, but it doesn't necessarily help you improve the predictive performance. Like that is what the user has to do. And like it's just a topological lens into the model. So yeah, like those are my ideas. Like I would say like use better augmentations, use more data points, do more data pre-processing, and I think like people take data engineering for granted these days, but if the data is really good, then like even your Fresnel 50 can give like a really good performance, and it can be really robust under all these perturbations. So yeah, like that's my answer. So it's more like a benchmark. So well, I guess you could call it that. It's more, I would say it's more of a I would still like to call it a lens. Like it could be a microscope or a magnifying lens to look into the model. You can consider it as a tool that you can use to benchmark your models. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's where it ends. Like it doesn't help you improve the model. It only explains the model to you in a topological way. It's more like looking at the geometry of the model and not the I don't know, like, and it's not like a method to improve the model itself. So yeah, like could you like clarify what you mean by benchmark, because there are no numbers or metrics involved here, because it's really subjective and it's really hard to quantify these things with numbers. So if you could clarify, I could talk more on that.
So
Okay, yeah. So like the model separates those labels into clusters. Yeah. So there's actually a metric that we use to look at the homogeneity of the models. Like I can actually show you that when I open the paper after I'm done with the presentation. So we created two metrics to look at the homogeneity and the hierarchy of the clusters. So yes, there are metrics that you can use to look at the purity and the homogeneity of clusters. So yes, there is an option for that. You can probe into the library and you can fetch those out. Sorry, David, you were saying something.
yeah, I said no questions on Slido.
Okay, all right. All right then. So I'll go into the next part of this. And again, here's another example. So noise plus compression. Um, so here with salt and pepper noise, um, it's like more severe. There's like nothing out here. Like the whole latent representation is a mess. And like with like Intate Sankey's, like you're still seeing some of the flows, but it doesn't really mean anything. But it's like if your model is robust, it can still create these clusters. So yeah. And again, like this was another experiment that we performed. Like you can look at the model stability, like the way it organizes stuff in the high dimensional space. Like let's say you're using a certain seed to perform the inference, and the model performs really well. And you change the seed and the model does not perform. What does it say? Like the model is really bad. And this can be seen with the stability experiment. Like you can look at like same input, different seeds, or different input, same seeds, and see how the topology changes. And our visualizations assist you with that. And I think like the final thing that I would like to talk about is the coordinated views. Like we also provide a dashboard for the users. So I don't have the live demo with me right now. It's going to be deployed after the after we receive the reviews, the final reviews. So you can look at the same things over here. Like you can upload your model and you can choose your input data points, and you can look at the same visualizations on the dashboard. Like here you can see the complete filtration process, and then you have the Sankey visualization here, and the distance heat map over here, and the blob viz, which actually has contours, which is helpful to look at the density. Like I didn't mention this during the viz slide, but you can actually change the blob visualization into contours, which lets you look at the density of the data points. You can also read the paper if you're interested in how this can be used for like downstream tasks. So yeah, like that's basically it. Any
Cool.
questions?
So I'll share a Slido now, guys. You can scan the QR code or use the link I provided before. You can post your questions or just talk into the call, unmute yourself, or write in the chat. Also, we have feedback form that I created. You, after completion, you will receive slide, deck, and paper, and we'll also publish the recording later. So, yep. Let's wait for any questions, few minutes, and we'll see. Thank you for the lecture.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Yeah, we have a question, Danilo.
Yeah, I have a question. Can you please explain what's happening on the right half of a heat map? Thanks.
Over here?
Yeah, it was on the previous slide. On the
Hold
first
on.
one and on the previous as well, on the 33rd or 32nd.
Okay, hold on. Let me
Share
30-second. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen.
Yeah.
My bad. Give me. Hope my screen's visible now. So this one here.
Yeah,
Are you referring to this? So like the heat map just represents the like the distances, like the pairwise distances between the data points. So like let's say you have 250 data points in the latent space, like how far they are from each other. Like that's what the heat map represents. And you can actually see the clusters over here, like with the help of the legend here, you can see that there are clusters being formed. Like there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 clusters being formed here. And like these are just pairwise distances between the input data points. So that's what the heat map represents.
all right, I get it. Thanks.
Yeah, and another question: how the values for thresholds are being chosen for Sankey threshold for Sankey plot, where you have multiple areas and it's always different values like 0.5 or 3.2, and I don't know how exactly I'm being chosen. Yeah,
that's actually a great question. Yeah, I was shocked that nobody asked that during the presentation. So let me go back to one of the initial Sankeys.
You're not sharing again. Okay, I'll share Slido when we have questions. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Oh, am I sharing now?
Yes, you're sharing, yes.
Okay, sounds good. So I'll just go back to one of the initial Sankeys. So yeah, like I was saying before, I think like it was really hard. Like it's really hard, I get it, to understand the filtration process unless you have a mathematical background, but you don't need any of that. So if you just consider that filtration is similar to your hierarchical clustering or something like that, you'll understand that you have individual data points and they'll form clusters at a certain threshold and they'll merge into one big cluster finally, like at a really large radius. So how do we choose these thresholds, like the middle one, which literally overlaps with the original labels? Like we look at the purity and the outliers and like the cluster overlap. So there are like 3 thresholds. I think forgetting hold on, forgot the person's name. I think it was Pablo. Yeah, so Pablo asked, it's more like a benchmark. So yes, it's a benchmark because we had these different metrics that we use to create this here, like to see if there's any overlap between the original data points and the filtration threshold. So you just look at this, like clusters that are really pure, and compare that to the ground truth, and then you just display that here. So it's based off of that metric. So the stages are being chosen based off of the metrics that are mentioned in the paper. But yeah, that's a really great question. I think that was one of the significant things or significant contributions from the paper, like looking at the stages themselves. So yeah, I don't know if that clarified your question or not, but you can
Yeah,
let me know.
I wonder where can I find this paper to.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll send it to David, and David can share it on the chat, like the Telegram chat, or I could send the link in the meet.
Yes, I will
chat
share
right
it.
now. Okay, yeah, that sounds good. I'll share the slides and the paper.
I posted on Telegram chat, also here in Google Meet if you want. It's preprint now, but you're like waiting to publish, right?
Yes. So like the current plan was looking like I sent it to IEEE Viz, which is like a visualization conference, and the reviews come out in like 10 days. And if it doesn't get in, I'm just gonna send it to a journal and play the long game, play the waiting game.
Okay,
So,
cool.
yeah.
Cool. So no questions slide on now. Any other questions, guys? Maybe questions, comments, not only questions.
Yeah, I think I would love some feedback too. If you all have any additional feedback or like any comments that you're willing to make, I would love to hear them.
Yeah, I would like to see how we can really like through this lens take away some insight into the inner workings of our models, like to eventually improve them.
Yeah, like I think like that is something that's a super philosophical and technical question. I think the way it was answered in the paper was the user can look at these things and perform X, Y, and Z to improve the model performance. And I think like like the way the study was structured was more on the explainability side of things rather than the diagnostic side of things, like using this as a toolkit to improve the model. Like that is definitely something I want to do too, with the help of topology. But yeah, that's a really nice comment. Is this library available online? It is. It is available on GitHub, and it's, yep. You can also get the pip package. You can look up full, and you will be able to access it. I think I had to make the repository private during the review cycle. I had it public like 2 months ago, and I made it private after I sent the paper to a second conference. I can share the source code with you personally if you're interested. You can reach out to me on Telegram. Hold on, let me post my Telegram in the chat here. I think David can. Well, I'm still in the group chat.
Yeah,
so.
I'll share a handle. So Gman.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Maybe you are going to release it to the public access in the future after conference and so on.
Yes. Yes. So, well, my professor suggested that I should wait till everything is done, because we don't want IEEE or any of these organizations getting copyrights to the source code, which is why we are not doing that. Like it's part of the paper, but we're not giving the source code away.
Okay,
So,
but
yeah.
I think the name of the library will not change drastically in the future, so you can share the name, so we
Yeah.
can find it later.
All right. I'll just like full. It's just that I can send the link. Like would love to share the source code in the chat.
We'll keep posted, right? After you make it public, after your conference,
yeah,
post in Telegram chat.
Yeah. Oh, and I would love collaborators. I really love collaborators. If anyone's willing to collaborate and work more in this domain, just hit me up, and I would love to work with new people all the time. So yeah.
Cool, guys. Any other questions, comments? Cool. Seems like no questions.
Feedback is super helpful too. So if you have any feedback, then let me know. And if you're interested in the math, you can read the paper, because it's more deeper out there. I tried to make this talk CS friendly rather than math friendly. So yeah.
Cool, guys. Thank you. Thank you for the lecture.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me.
Yeah, that was very, very interesting. So we have feedback form. You can complete it if you're interested. You'll have bonus at the end, slides, and PDF archive. We'll also post recording later if you want to share with your friends. Yep, and let's wrap this up then. Let me stop the recording. Boom.